Steve Hill's a guy I met while running for office. He was running for a state senate seat. But hold on, that's not just the only thing about Steve. He worked in aerospace. He's a Marine. He then became a real estate appraiser and a comic. And he was a corrections officer for about a decade. So this is a very interesting guy, no matter how you slice it. But on top of all of that, he also suffered discrimination recently that I think is telling in the context of these times. So, Steve Hill, welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you, Jake. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to express myself.
Absolutely. And there was nobody who was a bigger character. I mean, you made me look boring, Steve, on the campaign trail. Okay, so, but we're going to talk about a serious topic here. You told me a story about how you were doing your job appraising real estate when something unusual happened to you. Unfortunately, in this country, it's not that unusual. So tell us what happened.
Basically, in a nutshell, and I'm going to try to make this brief. An officer saw me in his neighborhood shooting comparable properties for my appraisal reports. I had 3 properties to do that day. His was the first. And he got my license plate and basically went into his job as a sheriff's officer, as a deputy, LA County deputy, and tracked me down. And I really don't want to find out exactly how he did it, because I have a Department of Corrections security clearance, my license plate. But he somehow found his way to my house and questioned me as to why I was in his neighborhood. That's short story.
Yeah. So at that point, you're a state senate candidate, and you got the day job as the real estate appraiser. So do you think it was because you were a black man taking pictures of folks' houses that he wound up tracking you down and coming to your house?
I can't say for sure, because as you know, I'm a Satanist. One of the only black Satanists in history to ever run for state senate. I'm a Satanist, and my license plate read in black and gold, bold, for Satan. So at this point, we're going to have to go to court to find out if it was racial bigotry or racial discrimination or religious bigotry. He's going to answer to one of them because he made his way to my house and questioned me. So I don't know, but you know, that's only a small part of the story. Just trying to go in and I tried to go in and talk to the captain just to let him know, hey, your officer needs some training. And then I was totally ignored by him. He didn't call me. I went out to a meeting that he was at, sat in the front row. He asked, anyone have a problem with the sheriffs? I raised my hand and said yes. And from that point on, no one on the Civilian Oversight Committee or the Sheriff's Department tried to ascertain in any manner what my problem was. I basically stood around with a friend of mine at the end of the meeting, you know, waiting for someone to approach me. No one ever came to me. So that's when I had to file. I said, you know what, I'll just file a lawsuit.
So Steve, when he gave you your house and you said, hey, I'm a real estate appraiser and this is part of my job. If I was the cop, I think, oh, okay, I get it now. My bad. I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying, and go. So what happened instead?
Well, I didn't even like the premise of his questioning, because this is how they kill us. I'm going to be plain and simple with you. This is how they kill us. The question he proposed to me was, where were you 35, 40 minutes ago? And that was so insulting, because he knew where I was. I knew where I was. But a black man, maybe not as not with my resume. Say someone who hates the cops. That contact could have turned, you know, it could have went south real quick. But I knew what he was trying to do. And he even told me, because I asked him, did someone call the police on me? And he told me no. But then when they did the investigation, the lieutenant questioned me and said, "Oh, we had several calls about you," and they basically cleared themselves quickly. And this was pre-public lynching by George Floyd. This was before that. So they basically cleared themselves, and that's the biggest thing I have with law enforcement. And I know I wore a badge. I was in the Department of Corrections, prisons, 2 maximum security prisons. You can't let these guys investigate themselves. It's ludicrous. It's insane. You're not going to get justice if they keep investigating themselves.
Yeah. So, Steve, you've been part of the protest now since the George Floyd killing. Obviously, this is an issue that you cared about for a long time. But do you sense a change at all because of these protests, or do you think, no, we're still dealing with the same exact thing here? Do you have any hope that LA, for example, is going to make a change, or is it just as bad as it's ever been?
You know what? I don't think I see any change coming. Not for the foreseeable future. Not until we all basically look alike, and they kind of forget that they used to have slaves in this country. But as long as we have darker skin and they have us packed up in these hyper-segregated communities known as ghettos, we're going to have discrimination. I mean, I don't really have much hope. I just want to teach my kids what kind of country I want. I want everybody to learn our true history. I went to school in the 70s. I didn't know. They didn't teach us what people are learning now. Thankfully for the internet, where you can research your own information. But I don't see anything changing.
Yeah, no, I don't remember them teaching us about Juneteenth in school or any of that. And
Malcolm X, all they taught us Martin Luther King, and they killed him.
Yeah. So, Steve, you were saying off air that when you hear people talking about black on black crime, that gets you animated. So tell us about that. What are your thoughts on that, and why do you get so upset when people mention it?
I get so upset because it's a disingenuous argument. The whole without the knowledge of how we got into these ghettos, where we are in these hyper segregated communities where there's little upward mobility going on. There's no economic tax base. The blacks have no businesses. Therefore, the schools are going to suffer. They have no resources, and they did this redlining basically after World War II, when the GIs came back and they started building all of these subdivisions, and this country allowed the banks not to loan if they sold to black people. I mean, it's a whole thing. I recommend this book to people. I don't know if you can see it, but this is The Color of Law. It tells you how the government made these ghettos and basically crowded them with people with very little education and very little economic opportunity. This is an economic problem for the most part. But, when you see us killing each other, it's mostly because of hopelessness. My nephew was killed 2 years ago in St. Louis. Hopelessness. We need education.
Yeah, and so look, where you live now, the Antelope Valley, which is the northern part of Los Angeles, Palmdale, has had similar situations. There's redlining in Palmdale, and so talk to us about what redlining is and what it leads to.
Well, what redlining is, where the banks would give a preference to areas for easier lending when it's not people of color in that particular market area. Therefore, you wind up with African Americans all segregated into, it's basically state-sponsored segregation. It was supposed to stop in 1968, but it's still going on today. I'm a real estate appraiser. I know it's going on today.
Yeah, and that then leads to African Americans being put in only one section of town, and hence the term redlining. In the old days, they would literally draw a red line on a map.
Yes.
And not allow African Americans to buy properties outside of that, not give them mortgages for that, et cetera. And it happened as recently as, a couple of decades ago, and some theorize it still happens.
The mortgage meltdown. I was on the front line of that. I was on the front line. Who do you think was adversely affected by the mortgage meltdown the most? African Americans. Right now, we have the lowest home ownership basically in history. And how do you build generational wealth? Through real estate. So, the rest of the country has a cold, we have the flu.
Yeah, and by the way, with coronavirus, that was quite literal. That's exactly what happened. Yeah.
Sometimes you just can't write this shit.
Right. And so I want people to appreciate what Steve is saying. If you put folks in a certain area and then you underfund the education and you overfund the prisons and you do all the other things that come along with that, and then you turn around after taking away all their resources and say, hey, why is there more crime in your area? It's such a circular logic, and it's exactly the institutional racism that keeps African Americans down in this country. And then on top of that, you kneel on their neck and have the situation that happened with George Floyd. So, Steve, you got that lawsuit going now. You got every right to do your job like everybody else does. And whether it's for racial or religious bigotry, they got no right to stop you. So, good luck with the lawsuit.
I gotta tell you this. I spoke with Mike Garcia this morning. We had a phone conference. He wants to try to legally see how he can help me with this, because I think the world needs to know. You keep letting these guys investigate themselves, and we're never going to get any justice.
Yeah, Mike Garcia is the guy who just won a congressional seat in the 25th district where Steve lives and where I ran. He's a Republican, but if he actually sticks with his word and helps you, well, that would be great. He'd be representing you as he should.
Right.
So let's make sure he lives up to that.
Yeah, Christie came out. I invited both of them to come to the rallies that were held here. Christie actually came out. So I give her props for that.
Christy Smith is a Democrat in the general election in November. She just lost the special election, but she's still in the election for November. So those are your two main players in that district now, Christy Smith and Mike Garcia. And Steve, you know politics, so I love that you're putting pressure on both of them to make sure they represent the community.
And I went to independent. I'm an independent now. I left the Democratic Party. So, it's whoever wants to play ball.
All right, there you go. All right, Steve Hill, thank you for joining us on the Young Turks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.